the session will start with a remark from the regional director of UNESCO in West Africa. He'll be joining online. And after his intervention, we'll be having a presentation from our colleague, Tatevi Grigorian, who is a program specialist on internet universality. And follow that presentation, we will move to a discussion where our panelists will share their experience on the implementation of the IUI framework within the country where they are based or that they have covered. And following that session, we will come back to another presentation from our expert, Mr. Fabio Sen, who will present the new perspective related to the revision of the IUI framework. And after that presentation, we will come back here with the panelists to discuss the perspective on a future revision of the IUI framework. And this will end the session with opportunity to the public to come up with any comment or question they may have. So we are still waiting for our regional director, Mr. Dimitri Sanga, to join online. And once he will join, we'll give him the opportunity to make his intervention. But in the meantime, I think we can give the opportunity to the panelists to present themselves, to introduce themselves. Let's say 2 minutes per person. So I will start with my colleague here. You have a mic.
Yes, good morning. Thanks very much, Michel. I'm Tatevi Grigorian. I work for UNESCO based in France. And as you mentioned, I'm the program specialist for Internet Universality and our Internet Universality ROMEX indicators, which I will be talking about very shortly. Thanks very much for being here and please.
Thank you very much. I am professeur Alain Kiyindou, mais je vais parler en français. Donc, je suis professeur en sciences de l'information et de la communication et je m'occupe d'expertiser, en fait, de coordonner un certain nombre de rapports pays, donc avec l'UNESCO sur l'universalité d'Internet. Et donc, c'est sur la base de cette expérience que je vais intervenir tout à l'heure. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Angela Minayo. I work in an organization known as Kenya ICT Action Network. We are an ICT policy think tank that catalyzes ICT policy reforms in Kenya through research, stakeholder engagement, advocacy, and capacity building. We conducted the IUE research in 2019 and did a follow-up in 2022, and I'm happy to share our experience.
Thank you very much. My name is Bengalo, a delegate from the Gambia. I am representing the Information Technology Association of the Gambia as the Vice President. I also sit as a multi-stakeholder advisory board for the IUI ROMEX indicators assessment that is currently going on in Gambia. So we are part of the 44 countries that have the assessment ongoing. And we're in the latter stages of our assessments. We're currently doing validation workshops around it. So thank you very much. I'm excited to be part of this panel. Bye.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Sebgo Mahamadi, je suis journaliste, je viens du Burkina Faso. J'ai eu la chance de participer donc à l'évaluation du Burkina. Merci.
Thank you. So I'm Michel Kenmo. I'm the West African Advisor for Communication and Information. I'm based at UNESCO office, regional office in Dakar. So I will be doing my best to coordinate this, moderate this session. And I hope that all of you will support and contribute, and that this session will be a vibrant session with your intervention and also the quality of the presentation. We are still waiting for the regional director to join online, but I'm going to give the floor to Fabio Sen, who is online, to present or introduce himself. Fabio.
Good morning. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thanks for the invitation. I'm Fabio Seni. I'm from Brazil. I'm based in São Paulo, Brazil. I'm survey project coordinator at Sept.br, which is a UNESCO Category 2 center based in São Paulo and focus on the implementation of investigation and producing indicators on ICT, SSE news in Brazil. So we contribute with this IOI framework since the implementing the Brazilian IOI, but also helping other countries to implement it in the Latin America and other regions. So thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you, Fabio. We are also having our other colleague. We have Karen Landa online, as well as Camila Gonzalez, who are online moderator and also rapporteur for this session. We are also joined our other colleagues who are actually online, and also other participants who are following this session online. We are happy to have Mr. Dimitri Sanga, the Regional Director for UNESCO, who is now online. Good morning, Director.
Good morning, Michelle. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dear Director, we were expecting from you, so we are now going to give you the opportunity to deliver the opening remark for this ROMX session at the 2023 Africa Internet Governance Forum. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Michelle, thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues, dear participants. We are having in Dakar heavy rains since during the last 3 hours. So it's not easy to go from place X to Y in the city. That's why I'm late, so sorry for that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, esteemed participants. It's really a pleasure for me to welcome you to this session of the Africa Internet Governance Forum, which is dedicated to UNESCO's Internet Universality ROMX indicators. I would like to seize this opportunity to extend my congratulations to the federal government of Nigeria,
remercier
the host country, and the organizer of this edition of the Africa Internet Governance Forum. Honorable guests, this UNESCO session will delve into one of the critical aspects of our digital landscape, which is about internet-related policies, practices, and their impact, with a focus on Africa, the African context. Indeed, it's an undeniable truth that the internet has revolutionized the way we live. What was once a mere innovation has blossomed into an omnipresent force and an integral part of our modern world. Internet has permeated nearly every aspect of our daily existence, from the way we communicate and access to information to how we work, we learn, and entertain ourselves. And on even a larger scale, the internet has proven to be fertile ground for economic growth and innovation, collaborative research on a global scale, and the empowerment of individuals and movements. Its impact is so profound that it has fundamentally altered the way we live and interact with another. It is because of this impact that for many years there has been a wide recognition for the need to achieve universal connectivity. And while enormous progress has been made toward that goal, our work should not stop there. It should also call for the need for universal values that guide the way we use and access the internet. It is a response to this need that UNESCO has been paving the way in advocating for a human-centered internet through the Internet Universality, Rome X principles, and indicators. The Rome principles, which were endorsed and adopted by our General Conference in 2015, stand for an internet that is R, based on human rights, O, open, A, accessible by all, nurtured by M, which is multi-stakeholder participation, and concern for cross-cutting issues such as gender equality, sustainability, and environment and security. After its adoption, UNESCO created the Rome X Internet Universality Indicators framework to help countries voluntarily assess the state of internet development at the national level and formulate actionable policy recommendations for relevant stakeholders to achieve the goal of human-centered internet. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, since its inception, our continent has been a proud pioneer in various aspects of the Rome X framework and is currently the region with the largest number of ongoing Rome X assessment, with 15 out of the 34 evaluations underway taking place in African countries, with a 3 published assessment report in Africa already. I think that we have to be proud of that. Africa is also a pioneer in implementing a follow-up assessment, as Kenya has finalized an evaluation to understand the impact that the Rome X assessment had on the national internet environment and its policies. When UNESCO developed the IUI framework, our goal was to periodically update the framework to ensure its continued relevance, considering swiftly evolving digital technologies. We have reached the 5-year mark and are now turning to the collective experience to revise the framework. Africa is a key region to gather insight and lessons learned to inform the ongoing revision of the indicators. The experience of African researchers and all stakeholders present in this room and online will certainly contribute toward the goal set forward in this revision process that will facilitate the completion of more countries as we continue our quest to achieve internet universality. Dear participants, as we gather here today, it is crucial to highlight that the African continent is a dynamic and diverse landscape with varying levels of internet penetration and digital literacy. While we celebrate the growth of the internet across the region, we must also acknowledge the challenges that persist in ensuring its universality for all Africans. The African Internet Governance Forum serves, therefore, as a vital platform for dialogue and collaboration among various stakeholders from across the continent to address these multifaceted issues surrounding the internet and its governance. In this regard, today's session will also provide a platform for experts, policymakers, and all stakeholders to share their insights, experiences, and perspective on the internet universality indicators on how they relate to the African context. It is through these discussions that we can chart a path forward, one that takes into account the unique challenges and opportunities we face on this vibrant continent. I want to emphasize the importance of our collective effort in safeguarding and promoting the universality of internet in Africa. It is not just a matter of connectivity, but a question of empowerment, inclusivity, and progress for all our people on this continent. Thus, I look forward to the fruitful discussion that will follow and hope that together we can contribute to build an internet that is truly reflecting the values of human rights, openness, accessibility, and multi-stakeholder participation. I would like to thank you for your attention, and let us commence this session with an open and forward-thinking spirit. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. We really appreciate the open remark in which you highlighted the importance of this session and also of the IUI framework. We want to wish you a great day, and hope we know that your agenda may not allow you to follow the session throughout, but was a great pleasure to have you online. Thank you, Director. We are now going to turn to this room where we will start with a presentation from our colleague, Tatovic Gregorian, who will introduce to us the IUI framework project. We'll learn from here. We expect to learn from her presentation what has been done so far, where and with what result, but also what's next. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Michel. I'll just ask the team to share my presentation, please. And I welcome to those participants who just joined. Very happy to have you here. Yes, for those who joined now, we've already introduced ourselves, but just to remind, I work for UNESCO. I'm the specialist for UNESCO's Internet Universality Indicators. Our regional director just now set the grounds and gave a very quite comprehensive overview of what internet universality indicators are. I will try to unfold it a bit in more detail. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So as the director mentioned just now, UNESCO has developed the Internet Universality Indicators, which have been endorsed by the General Conference of UNESCO, endorsing the concept of Internet universality, and also 4 principles that Internet should be based on, and those being human rights, open, accessible to all, and nurtured by multi-stakeholder participation, and to ensure its comprehensiveness in assessing the internet environment in helping develop a universal internet that is based on these principles. We also introduce cross-cutting issues such as gender equality, safety and security online, sustainable development and environment. Next slide, please. So what is Internet Universality Indicators? The framework which I have with me now in English and in French. So this serves a framework to voluntarily assess the Internet environment at the national level based on the principles that I mentioned. Helping the countries to see the actual evidence-based, based on the evidence, actual environment of the internet, see where the gaps are, where the opportunities are, and help formulate policy recommendations, actionable policy recommendations, which are addressed to all relevant stakeholders which can be governments, academia, judiciary separately, civil society organizations, and other relevant stakeholders, allowing them to have collective participation and multi-stakeholder participation in shaping human-centered internet development, internet environment. Next slide, please. So this is not to, the assessment is voluntary meaning that it is initiated by the national stakeholders. And just to highlight that this assessment does not mean to do any ranking. It is merely to help the national stakeholders to have evidence-based information and clear understanding of the environment. And this framework is not a standalone framework itself. It contributes to sustainable, it's a unique tool that contributes to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and also contributes to fulfilling UN Secretary General's Global Digital Compact objectives, one of which is to close the digital divides. This is what the framework also helps to address. Next slide, please. So the unique strength of these indicators, just if to sum, is that it's as I mentioned, it's an UNESCO endorsed framework, and it's an internationally recognized tool. It's a unique tool indeed to assess the internet development at a national level, and it is recognized as such by international actors as well. And as I mentioned, it is not for ranking. It is merely to help the countries understand the environment. And it has a really unique strength in measuring human rights and have a multi-stakeholder approach. So we've been discussing recently and way before as well that very often, for example, some actors might not feel as involved. For example, civil society might not feel as involved, but one of the unique strengths of this framework and this process is actually a process as well, and it gives a voice to all the actors, including civil society, and puts highlight actually allowing all the stakeholders to have a say in the process, as well as maintain the spirit of multi-stakeholder cooperation even after the process towards the implementation of the indicators. Next slide, please. So in total, this is a very comprehensive set of indicators, and which includes categories which are, as I mentioned, and the director mentioned, which are rights, openness, accessibility to all, multi-stakeholder participation, and cross-cutting issues. But apart from categories, there are also a number of themes, 6 themes in the R and A categories, 5 themes in O and X categories, and 3 themes in the M category. And we have the indicators, but we also have the guiding questions which help collect the data and the information in order to make the assessment. And I want to mention, perhaps it's in the next slide, but to mention that in total we have, yes, this is just an overview of what I mentioned here. You can see, for example, themes that address, for example, policy, legal and ethical frameworks, address, for example, trust and security, and equitable access. So these are the themes that are covered in these indicators. And we have 303 indicators in total. And we say that 109 of them are core indicators, meaning that we strongly recommend that countries use at least these 109 indicators. The reason why we have so many indicators is we understand that the context and the culture in each country is different. And we have so many countries which can be adapted to the situation in the country and cultural environment of the country, ensuring that the contextual environment and cultural aspects are covered to give an overall overview. And then, for example, in some countries, focus can be in an area which is particularly relevant, that could be different to that of another country. So this really helps to have a complete overview. Next slide, please. So this is basically the facts that I just mentioned. Just as director mentioned, so far we have 40 actually assessments. 6 have been published, 3 of which is in Africa, and 34 are ongoing. And as we already mentioned, 15 is in Africa. Next slide, please. Here you can see the map of the countries, just to have a visual idea. So I was asked before what gray is. Gray is the countries that where we have no process so far. Green are published ones. Yellow ones are where we have the process ongoing, and green ones are the countries where the publications are published. Next slide, please. Here is what the publications look like. And I'll be happy to share the presentation. You can go to the link and have a look at how it looks like, how the publications look like. Next slide, please. I'm rushing through because I've been notified. So I just wanted to share a few examples of, for example, policy recommendations in Africa. Of course, we have many more examples, but you can really see how targeted and evidence-based they are. For example, in Kenya, one of the recommendations was to lower taxes for mobile phones to increase affordability among the citizens, or in Ethiopia, to design a legal framework on the commercial use of personal data and international data transfer. So these are really targeted and evidence-based recommendations. Next slide, please. Which actually lead, I think we can skip this one and go to the next one. And I didn't speak about the steps. We have a really, really detailed and thorough process. But given the time, I will not go through each of it. I trust the colleagues who have implemented, they will talk about the process, showing really how important each step is, and also focusing on multi-stakeholder participation, which I mentioned includes all stakeholders from government to civil society and academia. Next slide, please. And I just have a few examples of the countries of results. So for example, but I'll just mention the assessment in Senegal, because we're at AFIGF. For example, in Senegal, the IA assessment facilitated the implementation of the 2025 digital strategy for Senegal. And the high-speed national plan. And we had results in really significant results in contributing to the adoption of laws and regulations, and also contributing to national digital strategies of countries where the implementation has been completed. Next slide, please. I think that's the last one. I won't talk about the revision because Fabio will have a thorough overview, and I think conscious of time, Michelle, thank you very much. I'll end my presentation here. I would just like to share the last slide, where I would urge Yes, I would just urge everybody to visit our website to find out more. And of course, I'll be here to talk with you about the process and about the project in detail. I will just urge you to join our dynamic coalition. We have a dynamic coalition, including IGF Dynamic Coalition on Internet Universality Indicators. I'm happy to share the links with you. Join the community, have your voice and input, and we're happy to cooperate and discuss further and have you on board. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Can we give her a round of applause, please?
Thank
you very much. We are going to move with the next step of this panel, where we have our panelists here. They have introduced themselves, and I want them to reflect on the involvement in the IOI process within their own country. And while reflecting on this, I want you to focus on the effectiveness of the IOI process itself, from the setting up of the multi-stakeholder advisory board till the finalization of the IOI report. And also to reflect on the main challenges, but not only challenges, but also opportunities and lessons learned from the whole process within the country where you have been involved. I'm going to invite the panelist from Kenya to start her presentation. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Kenya conducted its first IUI report in 2019. At the time, I was working as an assistant researcher on the rights framework. So after the multi-advisory board was constituted, each lead researcher was assigned a research assistant. There was also a multi-stakeholder approach in how the research team was selected, so that we had both technical, some researchers with a technical background, researchers with a multi-stakeholder IGF process background, and then we had researchers with a legal background. Given my legal background, I did the human rights indicator for obvious reasons. So that was the process. First of all, we want to have multi-stakeholderism both in the MAB and in the research team, so that we will find ourselves even cross-sharing. So the person doing research on cross-cutting issues will find something on the rights framework, and someone working on maybe accessibility will find something on the openness and share within the team. So it was a very interesting research opportunity for me at the time. Another thing we saw is that before the IUI indicator, there was no document to show Kenya's development, to show Kenya's internet development. What we had were bits and bits of pieces of people doing different evaluations. So you'll find maybe, and it will be sector specific. So we will have a landscape on democracy on the internet, for instance. Then someone will do research on privacy in Kenya. So all these were just scattered, and it was not in one place. This document gave us an opportunity to have a reflection of the entire landscape in a very wholesome view. I would also say that the recommendations were some of them were actually implemented, because Kenya is doing the follow-up review, and we were able to see some recommendations that we did in the first report being actualized between the years 2020 to 2022. So that was quite interesting. I'll just mention one. So when we did the one in 2019, Kenya did not have an ICT accessibility standard for persons with disability. So you'll find that this is like a code of guidelines on software and hardware to make sure that it is accessible for persons with disability. That was not there. Between 2020 and 2022, Kenya passed the protocol of the African Commission of the African Human and People's Rights on the rights of persons with disability. So they passed the protocol, and Kenya became the first African country to pass an ICT accessibility standard, which was gazetted. So you can see the leaps between the two reports, and this, in my opinion, was very important. One of the challenges we had, as I wrap up, because I want to make sure the other panelists have their time, is that we really had challenges getting quality data, even data that you'd expect to be open and easily accessible because it's by the government. So you'll find even getting the ICT policy document, for instance, is a problem, or getting information on its update and what is the latest, what is it called? What is the latest publication? You'll also struggle. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And then we move to Burkina Faso. Mr. Mamadi Sebogo, over to you.
OK. Merci bien pour la parole. Merci bien. Je vais parler du cas du Burkina Faso. Je disais tantôt que je suis journaliste. J'ai participé donc à l'évaluation du Burkina qui est en cours parce que notre document n'est pas encore validé. Je pense que c'est prévu pour début octobre, si mes informations sont bonnes. En tout cas, mais le document provisoire est là. Je peux vous partager donc quelques résultats donc, de ces documents-là. Et comme l'a dit ma collègue du Kenya, un peu partout, hein, dans nos pays aussi, tout le monde parle d'Internet, de son importance dans la vie sociale, économique, politique, mais il n'y a pas de document de référence qui fait un récapitulatif de ce qui est fait dans les différents secteurs. Il n'y en a pas. C'est vraiment dommage et je pense que cette initiative était la bonne, donc qui devrait permettre à tous les décideurs d'avoir un document référentiel, tous les acteurs, toutes les parties prenantes, donc d'avoir un référentiel. Et notre équipe aussi était pluridisciplinaire, hein. Moi, je suis journaliste, juriste. Il y avait des universitaires en sciences de l'Internet, de l'informatique, en sciences sociales. Il y avait toutes ces ressources variées là pour mieux cerner donc tous les pans donc de la problématique liée donc à l'Internet. Et que dire encore au premier constat, comme je le dis, le document n'est pas encore validé. Ce qui ressort est qu'il y a une certaine volonté politique qui est là affichée pour assurer donc l'accessibilité donc de l'Internet à tout le monde. Il y a un cadre juridique qui est là. On a une stratégie nationale donc, de développement de l'économie numérique qui inclut toutes ces questions d'accès à l'Internet. Mais il y a encore des défis à relever. Il y a encore des défis à relever en termes d'accessibilité géographique et aussi lié au coût. Et vous savez que de plus en plus, c'est nous, dans les zones rurales, l'Internet n'est pas totalement une réalité. Il y a un effort qui est fait avec les opérateurs de téléphonie mobile, mais la couverture n'est pas encore totale. Et sans oublier que le contexte actuel ne nous favorise pas avec la crise sécuritaire qui se passe. Ça vient compliquer la tâche parce que nos terroristes qui sabotent les installations, ils sabotent les installations, ça fait que même simple téléphone dans certaines régions, c'est compliqué, ne parlons pas donc d'avoir l'Internet. Donc tout ça, c'est des nouveaux défis qui s'ajoutent. Dernièrement, l'armée a convoyé donc certains opérateurs pour qu'ils partent en province, réinstaller certains équipements. Tout ça, ça montre la volonté politique donc de permettre l'accès aux technologies, à l'Internet et autres. Et ce qui ressort aussi, c'est la multiplicité des acteurs qui interviennent dans la gouvernance du secteur de l'Internet au Burkina Faso. Vous avez ce qu'on appelle l'ARCEP, qui est l'autorité de régulation des communications électroniques et des postes. Vous avez l'Agence nationale donc, de la promotion des technologies de l'information et de la communication. Vous avez le Conseil supérieur de la communication. Vous avez, comment on appelle ça encore, la CIL, la Commission de l'informatique et des libertés, et tous ces acteurs-là, il n'y a pas un cadre fédérateur entre ces différentes institutions qui sont plus ou moins indépendantes des autres. Et ça est un peu jaloux de ses compétences. Donc, ce que nous proposons, c'est qu'il y ait davantage une synergie d'action de manière structurelle à ce qu'il y ait un cadre législatif, un cadre institutionnel qui peut permettre à ces acteurs-là, parce que si chacun reste enfermé dans son domaine, la tradition, c'est nous, les institutions, la collaboration n'est pas systématique. Chacun est réservé dans son coin, dans son endroit. Et je pense que pour une meilleure gouvernance, il faut une synergie d'action donc, de ces différentes institutions qui agissent de façon isolée. C'est vrai que chacun fait du bon boulot, mais je pense qu'avec plus de synergie, ça devrait pouvoir aller. Autre élément, bon, je vais aller peut-être à quelques recommandations. Hein. Nous pensons que pour asseoir une base institutionnelle et juridique donc, de l'accès à l'Internet, nous avons proposé par exemple une constitutionnalisation donc, du droit d'accès à l'Internet. je pense que quand c'est écrit dans la loi fondamentale et que il y a des moyens juridiques donc de faire pression, de faire appel. C'est vrai qu'en Afrique, les constitutions, on les viole, on les respecte pas totalement, mais c'est déjà une bonne base si on arrive à inscrire ça dans la constitution. C'est un droit fondamental, c'est un droit humain fondamental. Si on arrive à le faire, c'est déjà une bonne chose. Et par la suite, les différentes lois organiques et réglementaires et autres pourront venir donc compléter ce qui est écrit au niveau macro, au niveau de la loi fondamentale.
Thank you very much from Burkina Faso for your contribution to this first question. I'm now turning to Gambia. Gambia is the youngest country engaged in the IOI process. So what can we learn from the Gambia experience regarding the implementation of IOI framework? Over to you, Ms. Menge Lord.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you to my colleagues that I'm sharing the panel with. Like he rightly mentioned, we currently have the process ongoing. So we're part of the 44 countries that have the assessment ongoing in the country. So with the UNESCO IUI assessment in the Gambia, it's been steered by the IT Association of the Gambia, which is the association that I work with. And we're doing this in consultation with a technical group. So we retained consultants that have diverse experience in this sector. So one of the consultants that is leading this IUI assessment actually has working relationships with UNECA, and he's also in academia, so he's quite equipped to do the work. So when we started the assessment, I think the contract was signed in February of 2023. Our first job was to constitute the multi-stakeholder advisory board, because we did understand the importance that will have on the validity of the report that we were going to be producing at the end of the assessment. And the board, we ended up having an 8-man board. So it is made of the academic community. We have technical groups. We have the private sector, which is leading when it comes to internet in Gambia. We have the government stakeholders as well. And we have individual end users, because we also wanted to know from the people that are consuming it, what is their perspective in terms of internet connectivity in the country. So when we constituted the multi-stakeholder advisory board, we were supposed to start beginning the data collection process. And I would say that was one of the first challenges, not just in the fact that Gambia, just as many of its regional partners in Africa, access to information still remains a huge challenge. And it showed its face when we were doing the assessment and we started needing these data to collate it. So data collection was one of our biggest challenge in terms of the multi-stakeholder advisory board, but also some of the indicators that we needed to hit. When we went to some of the agencies that we needed to collect data from, most especially we have a regulatory board in Gambia, which is called PURA. A lot of the data that we needed, some of them were either scattered around. It wasn't collated in one central area so that we can make sense of the data, but also to the multi-stakeholder advisory board, which were supposed to bring value. And we realized that having to have them understand all 303 indicators was a huge challenge. So we ended up having to reduce the indicators to the 109, which my colleague here did mention, to 109 core indicators. And we had to send the questions like prior, because when we went there for the meeting, for the first meetup to just get the information that we needed, we realized that although they are key stakeholders in these different sectors, they don't have all the information. And so we needed to give them time to prepare for some of the statistical facts that we wanted them to have, and we needed to have them to prepare. So we send the questions give them a time frame, which also affected a little bit on the timeline that we were working with in terms of the data collection process. But I would say it's a very interesting assessment that the Gambia is going through, because we realized that in as much as there's a whole lot of development that needs to happen in the internet space in Gambia, this assessment comes at a very opportune time, because there's a whole lot of work that is being done by the Ministry of Digital Economy. If you follow politics in Gambia, this is the first time in the Gambia that we're having a ministry centralized on pushing digital economy and technology issues in the Gambia. Before, it used to be information and communication. So the president decided to decouple it and actually have two separate ministries. And when we had our first meeting with the ministers, we realized that while we're doing the IUI assessment, they are currently ongoing on some of the recommendations that we even had on the document. And one of that is really improving internet access in the country. So the Gambia, we have one ACE cable, and we have about 10,000 kilometers running through the country, but the internet backbone runs only on 1,300 kilometers of fiber optic cable. So we realized that there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done in terms of redundancy, because one ACE cable, irrespective of what internet service provider you're connected to, when the internet goes down, when the ACE cable goes down, the whole country goes black. Yes. And so when we had this new ministry set up and the new minister came on board, that was his first agenda item, and which was to collaborate with the WADI project on the World Bank, which is the World Bank funding. And we're currently setting up the groundwork to bring on to bring on the second submarine cable. But other interesting statistics that we have during the IUI, I would just briefly skim through it. We did realize that 70% of the country are connected to broadband, but we also have 147% in terms of penetration in the country, which is quite high. So it means that more people in Gambia own smartphones. So what we need to do is really improve internet access, but also affordability, because they do have the devices to stay connected now. And some of the recommendations is really to help the implementation of the policies that we currently have around internet development in Gambia, especially keeping in mind the cross-cutting issues, but also to create more awareness, in terms of these policies, but also the IUI assessment indicators. There's still work to be done in that area. And lastly, our recommendation is to really improve access to information, not just in Gambia, but within the sub-region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Menge, for your presentation. Yes, we can give her a round of applause, please. I'm turning now to Professor Alan Kiyindu. He has been into this since the inception of the IUI. He had led IUI in many countries. So we like to hear from you, Professor, from your experience. What are the lessons learned? What are the challenges and also the opportunities of the IUI process in Africa? Over to you.
Merci beaucoup. Effectivement, j'ai mené un certain nombre d'expertises, de travaux sur cette question. J'ai commencé par le Bénin en 2019 et ensuite j'ai continué ce travail au Niger. Nous avons poursuivi avec nos amis ivoiriens qui sont ici en Côte d'Ivoire, que je salue d'ailleurs. Et actuellement, nous sommes en train d'évaluer les deux Congos. Donc, le Congo-Kinshasa, pour ce travail, la journée de la validation est prévue pour la semaine prochaine, le 27 septembre. Et pour le Congo-Brazzaville, la validation est prévue pour le 29, donc 2 jours après. Et pour la Côte d'Ivoire, nous attendons encore de voir comment on va évoluer. Donc, c'est pour dire que les expériences sont variées, les expériences sont différentes. Je pense que l'une des choses importantes, c'est de bien constituer l'équipe avec laquelle on travaille, donc ce qu'on appelle le MAB. Alors, on demande à ce qu'il soit paritaire, mais ce qui est encore plus important, c'est qu'avant de se lancer dans la constitution de ce MAB, c'est d'arriver à avoir une cartographie complète de l'écosystème du numérique dans le pays. Et à partir de cette cartographie, on va pouvoir savoir avec qui travailler, qui associer dans le MAB, et ensuite voir à qui faire référence quand on a des problèmes de collecte de données, où est-ce qu'il faut aller chercher. Donc ça, c'est un travail qui est important également à faire. Il faut tenir compte également dans la mise en place de cette étude, de tous les problèmes qui peuvent surgir. Généralement, les problèmes qui surgissent sont des problèmes politiques, puisqu'en Afrique, on sait qu'on est dans un contexte sécuritaire, un contexte politique qui n'est pas suffisamment stable. Donc, Ça a été le cas au Niger, ça a été le cas également en Côte d'Ivoire, où on a eu à avoir à traiter à 2 ministres différents. Et donc, quand on traite avec 2 ministres différents, effectivement, il faut arriver à s'adapter. Ce n'est pas toujours évident, puisque celui qui part ne pense pas toujours à transmettre le dossier à la personne qui suit. Et parfois, le ministre qui suit n'a pas le même intérêt par rapport au projet. On a aussi d'autres situations, comme le cas de la République démocratique du Congo, où on est un petit peu, on sait plus, on traite avec un ministre, le ministre du numérique, mais on s'aperçoit qu'au niveau de l'organisation, il existe aussi dans le pays un ministre en charge des nouvelles technologies de l'information et de la communication. Donc déjà, il faut arriver à trouver la différence entre ces deux ministères pour pouvoir vraiment travailler correctement. Mais dans tous les cas, que ce soit au Bénin, en Côte d'Ivoire, au Niger et dans les deux Congos, nous avons réussi à mobiliser les équipes, à travailler, à mener une réflexion intéressante sur l'état du numérique dans le pays, arriver à faire un certain nombre de recommandations. Et nous avions commencé avec le Niger, grâce donc au conseil de Michel, de travailler sur un certain nombre de projets, parce qu'il ne suffit pas de mettre en place des recommandations, mais encore, il faudrait qu'il y ait derrière des projets qui soient viables. Et avec les deux Congos, on a bien approfondi ce travail. Donc, on a fait effectivement un travail de fond sur des projets qui pourraient découler donc de ces recommandations avec les équipes. On a identifié des donateurs potentiels. Et on a trouvé des responsables de projets qui vont essayer de faire en sorte que ce soit vraiment des actions de terrain. Et ce sont des projets qui vont porter sur la sensibilisation, sur la formation, sur l'inclusion, notamment des personnes handicapées. Donc, on a une série pour chaque pays de projets comme ça qui ont été, sélectionnés. Donc, je pense que c'est une expérience intéressante avec des indicateurs qui sont plus larges que ceux qu'on peut trouver ailleurs. Mais en tout cas, ce qui est plus important et ce qui est attendu par les différents pays, c'est vraiment qu'on garde les pieds sur terre, qu'on soit vraiment dans la réalité, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de rapports qui sont rédigés, mais ce qu'ils veulent, c'est vraiment des actions concrètes et non simplement un rapport qui viendra s'ajouter de plus. Et c'est aussi intéressant, je pense, de bien discuter avec les ministres, avec les personnes de terrain pour savoir quelles sont vraiment leurs réelles attentes, qui, c'est vrai que ce sont des attentes qui peuvent coïncider avec le programme de l'UNESCO, avec les vœux de l'UNESCO, mais parfois il peut y avoir un certain nombre de différences dans les attentes, donc il faut arriver à s'adapter. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Professor Aleng, for sharing the experience from Benin, Côte d'Ivoire, Niger, DR Congo, and Congo. Thanks for our panelists for sharing the experience. I think we have gathered a number of lessons here about the importance of IUI process within each country. There are a varied experience, but all enriching experience. We're now going to reflect on the future of the IUI process, of the IUI framework. And to delve into that, I'm going to invite our panelist, who is online, Fabio Sen, to make a presentation of what are the perspectives of the IUI framework. Fabio, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you, Fabio. So the floor is yours. What next with the IUI framework?
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. It's an honor to participate in this event. I'm here in Brazil in the early morning, and now I'm gonna share my screen with a few slides to reflect on the questions on. So why to revise the indicators and what's coming next. So why I'm talking here, first of all, just to let you know that I'm from Sept.pr, which is a research center based in Brazil that is connected to the multi-stakeholder model that is running in Brazil, led by the CGI.br and the NIC.br. And CETIC.br is a center, is a UNESCO Category 2 center that produces data for Brazil and regarding Brazilian expats, but also helps other Latin American and African countries to develop their process of indicators. So that's why we are involved in the IOI in Brazil, and we were the first country that launched an assessment on the IOI back in 2018. So we pilot the methodology in the assessment in Brazil, and we launched it for the first time the assessment for the IOI. So since then, we cooperated with a number of countries to help them to implement the process and to discuss how to better make use of the assessments in each country. And now we are working together with UNESCO to suggest a few ways, since we are 5 years from the starting the process of implementations. We do need to come back and to see what is working, what is not working, what should be reflect on the methodology, how and what do you need to learn from the countries that already implemented the process and what's happening in the ground. So to do that, we started this year to make interviews with a few partners of the project and to understand and to look into each one of the reports that were made through the process. And then back in July this year, we started to interview and talk to lead researchers from participant countries to understand what happened in their process of implementation, and to design a draft proposal for revising not just the list of indicators, but the process of implementation. So just briefly, our idea was only to summarize the main concerns for those that implemented the methodology, but mainly to understand the lessons learned. So as some of you mentioned, what are the main difficulties, if it's data availability, if it's engaging the other sectors. So what are the main lessons learned from the process? What can we do to ensure a better implementation of IOI? Although it was started by around 40 countries, how can we ensure that more countries can be implementing the methodology? And also to consider if there are new dimensions that need to be covered that are not covered yet. So because the dynamics of the field is move so fast that there are some issues that we want to consider. And finally, what are the proposals for follow-up? So since you did the implementation, as Kenya did, the first follow-up, and it's very interesting to learn from them. So how to follow up the process so that we can make it very useful. So briefly, the main concerns of us when proposing some revision is to keep the holistic perspective in the framework. We don't want to be focused on one dimension. We want to be holistic on the Rome ecosystem. It's important to keep the process as a roadmap for action. So we don't want not just to have a ranking of who is best or who is worst in this figure, but we want to see in each area what are the actions that we can do and the recommendations that we can implement from the indicators. We also want to see what are the policies in practice, not just the laws that are or the legal provision, but if they are really implemented. We wanted a flexible approach so each country can take some decisions on what to implement. And we will also want to support the identification of data gaps, because when you do the indicator, you see that there are lots of data that you don't have in your country and you need to start to produce. So I'll go through this just to say that we learned from very different countries. So African region was the region that mostly, as already mentioned, implemented the process, but there was a prevalence of usage of the core indicators. And a few countries yet did the full implementation of the indicators. Most of them uses just the core indicators, and we are focusing on understanding what types of follow-up can we do from this country. So to focus on the main gaps or review what are the main gaps periodically, or more level of detail on something that is not covered in the first implementations or
You still have
recommendations.
2 minutes.
Okay, so thanks. So we did also, as I said, a consultation with different countries, mostly from Africa, because proportionally was the most number of countries. And to say a few, so what happened when we talk to people that implemented the assessment? So the majority think that the process is positive, is comprehensive, but although it's very extensive and complex to implement, so there are some complexity that we want to address. And the availability of data is something that is very important, as someone mentioned in the panel. So engaging specific actors to face these problems of the availability of data is very important. Also, dialoguing with local governments and UNESCO is something that we might want to better improve. And the difficulties in obtaining disaggregated data, and also in having qualitative methods to what are the main concerns of the people who implemented. Here's some figures from those countries that we interviewed. Most of them saying that every availability of data is the main difficulty for implementing the process. This is something important to understand. And finally, to understand what's coming next. So just to finalize. So a few ideas that come out is that maybe a reduction in the number of indicators can be desirable, because as we said, as data availability is a problem, so how can we ensure that we have a number of indicators that all countries can deal with in a good way? It's also important to design a small set of indicators related to issues that are new, that need to be updated. So, and for that, I think the link with the UN SDGs is very important. So countries have to monitor SDGs. So how SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals are connected to each indicators of IOI is very important. And also to make all the indicators simple, clear, and balanced among all categories. I'll just cover the issues on SDGs. Just my final slide here is on a new set of proposed dimensions that we might want to have some more indicators and to add to this methodology. So how can we deal with artificial intelligence? Although it's a digital aspect of society, it has a lot to do with the internet. So what's the relation of artificial intelligence and the overall field of internet? Also platform regulation, meaningful connectivity. So how can we make connectivity meaningful? The
presentation, we are running out of
yes.
time. So I know that we can share your presentation with the participant. Can we give a round of applause to Fabio for sharing this insight on the next step? Now I'm turning to our panelists. I'm going to ask the next question that I want you to reflect on and share your thought is, what improvement can be brought to the IOF framework in terms of terminology, in terms of question and indicator streamlining, in terms of new teams and so on? What improvement do you think we can bring to the IOI framework? And what change do you suggest to the overall IUI methodology to improve report relevance and also address the issue of data unavailability. So I'm going to give the floor to 3 persons. So who is going to start? Yes, Bengue.
Thank you very much. I like the point that Mr. Fabio mentioned in terms of simplifying the indicators. I think the whole 109 is quite good. I think 303 is a lot. Just considering the landscape in which we're working with Africa, our challenges are quite, they're quite shared. You'd see that the challenges that Gambia has, when you go to Senegal, is pretty much the same challenges, same as Kenya, and so on and so forth. So simplifying the indicators would really help us in our work to make sure that, the process is done smoothly and within time frame. But the second one for me is really finding a digitized way to present the report. Just knowing my folks, people don't read 200-page reports. So finding a digital way that is visually friendly to be able to consume the information, I think that's a good step to making the report relevant. Because for me, I just thought about, okay, what if we do all this work? How many people are going to know about this? Because when we looked at the broadband policy in Gambia, as a specific example, when we went to the villages and asked people, it was 100% unanimous no, that they didn't even know there was a broadband policy in the country. So if you have a policy that's been in the country for at least 7 years and people don't know its existence, then what is going to be different about the IUI report? So finding something like a nice, similar to like a wiki page of your internet universality indicators of your country would be great. I feel having graphic representations, having pie charts, visual representations of this data, and something that you can continuously improve once you keep on getting new information. I think those are 2 of my recommendations to keep in mind.
Thank you. Thank you from the Gambia, yes.
So I have just 2 recommendations. The first one is on data and availability. I think even as you go through the reports, you will see certain indicators having no data or it's always unknown. I think those are areas for opportunities because it means those areas are either under-researched or there are no resources for more research on those parts. So for instance, when we were doing the rights research in 2019, there are certain digital rights that are yet to be understood in our context, in our legal context. For instance, the right to assembly and the right to demonstrate, for instance. We understand it in the physical realm, but online we don't know how it looks like, and we don't know what a restriction online might look like because it's very abstract for us. So those are areas that we can think of as areas for possible research. The second thing is on the follow-up. Since Kenya is already doing the follow-up, I think it's a good approach to do the follow-up. But what about we do the follow-up in a more cyclic way? What I mean is during the launch of the report, can we have meetings with the relevant bodies as well to share what we have found, and maybe they can even they can shed more light on or clarify where maybe we got it wrong, and also to use it as almost the same way the UPR process is used to keep tabs on the government and the actors involved. So beyond the the research assessment, how can we use it as an advocacy tool? Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Sidogo.
OK, merci bien. À la suite des autres, oui, les indicateurs, c'est vrai que c'est un peu fastidieux, c'est un peu nombreux, mais bon, c'est compte tenu aussi de l'immensité donc du secteur de la gouvernance de l'Internet. C'est l'objectif donc de faire un maillage complet et cerner toutes les dimensions. Je pense que c'est ça qui justifie ce nombre-là. Et moi, peut-être même réduire le nombre, mais ajouter d'autres secteurs, parce que en dehors du secteur de l'éducation, de la formation, je pense que on peut avoir des indicateurs plus sectoriels, plus spécifiques. Qu'est-ce qui est fait au niveau du secteur de l'agriculture? Qu'est-ce qui est fait au niveau donc de la justice? Qu'est-ce qui est fait donc au niveau du secteur de l'environnement et du climat? Je pense que tous ces aspects n'apparaissent pas clairement. Et c'est des éléments qu'on peut prendre en compte, et comme ça prend en compte également les ODD. Un autre aspect, c'est au niveau décentralisé. J'ai l'impression que tous les indicateurs, c'est au niveau macro, au niveau central, alors que nos pays sont dans des processus de décentralisation où les collectivités locales, les communes locales ont une certaine autonomie de gestion. Mais qu'est-ce qui est fait au niveau des communes rurales pour l'accès à l'Internet? Est-ce qu'il y a des budgets qui sont prévus pour cela? Alors que tout le monde sait que 80% de nos populations vivent en milieu rural, c'est eux qui souffrent plus, la pauvreté c'est là-bas, mais c'est eux qui ne bénéficient pas trop des opportunités de technologie. Et je pense qu'il faut prendre cette dimension donc au niveau de concentrer. Et autre aspect, je ne sais pas comment, pour le suivi, je ne sais pas comment il faut dire cela. Jusqu'à présent, nous n'avons pas une société civile très forte en matière de gouvernance de l'Internet, comme dans le cas au niveau des droits humains, au niveau du climat, au niveau de l'environnement. Je ne sais pas s'il faut susciter ou il faut créer, ou il faut, en tout cas, mais il faut une société civile très forte en la matière et ça peut susciter, donc ça peut être un atout pour le suivi donc, de la mise en œuvre. Et deuxième élément, c'est les médias. Jusqu'à présent aussi, on a des journalistes spécialisés en politique, en environnement, en économie, mais jusqu'à présent, et surtout pour ces indicateurs-là, j'avoue que si vous allez faire un sondage, beaucoup de journalistes disent qu'ils ne savent pas ce que c'est que ces indicateurs-là. Et il y a un travail à faire à ce niveau pour renforcer les capacités des journalistes et les impliquer davantage à porter ces projets-là. Et avec eux aussi, c'est des interpellateurs, les DCG donc peuvent en tenir compte. Merci.
Our panelists, we are coming to the end, but I still want you, please, to reflect on this other question. What strategy can be undertaken by UNESCO to improve follow-up and implementation of the IUI report recommendation? And also, how and to which extent the application of IUI can support digital transformation in Africa? Who is going to try that? How can UNESCO improve the follow-up and the implementation of the IUI recommendation? What can be done at that level? And also, how can the IUI process support the digital transformation in Africa? Is there, we want to, Professor, okay, yes.
Pour le suivi, j'avais déjà commencé à le dire, hein, aussi bien avec la société civile que les médias.
Yes.
Oui, pour le suivi de la mise en œuvre, hein, j'avais commencé à l'évoquer avec mes réponses précédentes en parlant des médias, l'implication des médias et de la société civile. Mais peut-être qu'il faut voir avec les commissions nationales de l'UNESCO pour instituer une sorte de rituel de reddition des comptes. De sorte qu'à chaque année, tous les acteurs impliqués se réunissent pour faire le bilan. Chaque ministère, chaque organisation de la société civile qui intervient dans ce domaine-là, on fasse un rapport participatif et chaque acteur vient dire voilà ce qui a été fait au niveau du ministère de l'Éducation, au niveau du ministère de la Santé, au niveau donc du ministère de l'Économie et numérique. Tous les acteurs, tous les sectoriels fassent le bilan de façon participative. Quelles sont les limites, quelles sont les insuffisances, mais aussi, comme je l'ai dit, il faut un plaidoyer fort au niveau des décideurs. Et ça, c'est l'UNESCO, peut-être au niveau international ou régional, qui doit porter ça. Je ne sais pas là où les rapports ont été déjà restitués, comment ça a été fait, mais pour le Burkina, par exemple, ce serait bon que peut-être au niveau régional, l'UNESCO, Dakar, se déplace, lorsque le rapport est validé, on vienne avec la commission nationale, avec les ministères concernés, on remet au président du FASO, on remet au premier ministère, au président de l'Assemblée, tout en faisant les plaidoyers, en impliquant donc, en indiquant tout l'intérêt qu'il y a à promouvoir cela. Donc, je pense que c'est des petites solutions, ça peut aider donc à faire avancer les choses.
Thank you.
So I'll limit my response to the digital transformation, how UNESCO could really help in this country, just because we are not yet at the revision stage. But for the Gambia in specific, I would encourage that the UNESCO have sort of like a working relationships with these agencies that are responsible for data collection and embedding it in their report, in their reporting line. So let's say for Gambia, the Public Utility and Regulatory Authority, which is PURA, is responsible for working with the telcos and the ISPs. So how do we make sure that the indicators, instead of just bringing it as a new concept in the country when you're doing the IUI, you embed it in the reporting framework of these key institutions, so that by the time you need to do the assessment, they already have a framework of how they have already gathered this data, right? Because when the indicators come in and we're doing the assessment as a new initiative in the country, you realize that that data is not collated, it's not harvested, or if it's harvested, it's not collated enough for it to make sense, right? And it's for some of them, it's actually a quite new concept to them. You have to give them time to really adjust into learning what these indicators even mean to begin with. So I think that's a good way to start. So it gives you a free leg way for when we need to get the assessment done in terms of, but the second way is really to champion as well national digitization efforts in the country. So let's say the government has an eGov platform. How can UNESCO ride on that to make sure that the key institutions that we need to work with are digitally transformed? Their systems are digitized. Record keeping procedures are currently online. I think that will really help. So riding on eGov solutions, but also helping the institutions that are going to have to, we are going to have to work with to be fully digitized would really make sense.
Thank you. Yeah. Professor.
Ok, donc je pense qu'il y a un vrai problème déjà de visibilité des rapports sur les sites de l'UNESCO. Si on demande ici aux gens qui sont dans la salle combien ont déjà lu ces rapports-là ou combien savent que ça existe sur le site de l'UNESCO, je pense qu'il y en a très peu qui sont au courant. Donc je crois qu'il y a un gros problème de marketing à mettre en place du marketing pour que ça soit connu de tous et pour que ça puisse avoir aussi plus d'importance. Et je pense qu'il faut continuer aussi à organiser des réunions avec les ministres, puis c'est vraiment eux les décideurs. Il y a une réunion qui avait été organisée avec un certain nombre de ministres et d'autres se sont fait représenter. Et je pense que ce genre de réunions sont essentielles, pas simplement pour les sensibiliser sur la nécessité de lancer cette initiative-là, mais aussi pour les amener à faire le point avec nous sur l'avancement de ces initiatives. La journée de validation, la journée de lancement sont des moments forts qu'il faut médiatiser, il faut mettre beaucoup de moyens parce que ça permet une grosse visibilité, une grande médiatisation. Et ce qu'on pourrait faire aussi d'autre, c'est peut-être qu'après la journée de validation, organiser des journées thématiques qui peuvent se faire dans des régions, qui peuvent se faire n'importe où sur telle ou telle autre thématique. Ça peut être la santé, ça peut être l'agriculture, ça peut être, on peut procéder aussi par catégorie A, accessibilité, ouverture, ainsi de suite, de façon à ce que ça puisse vraiment s'imprégner au niveau de la société. Mais aussi et surtout, il faut aussi qu'il y ait un accompagnement. J'ai parlé tout à l'heure des projets, je crois que ça, il faut qu'on s'y mette parce que c'est quoi la différence entre un pays qui a mis en place le processus d'évaluation de l'universalité d'Internet et les autres pays? Ce sont ces projets qui vont venir après et qui vont pouvoir intéresser les gens. Et il y a aussi ce qui a été évoqué tout à l'heure, la mesure 2 ans après de l'application des recommandations. Et pour cela, il faut donner les moyens au comité, au conseil consultatif de pouvoir se réunir 2 ans après pour revoir, retravailler le document et voir quelles sont les avancées et qu'est-ce qui n'a pas avancé et si possible se relancer dans de nouvelles enquêtes pour voir pourquoi ça n'a pas évolué. Voilà en gros ce que je peux dire.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for our panelists. I'm now turn to the participant. We still have about 7 minutes or 10 minutes maximum. Yes, introduce yourself and then.
Okay, my name is Ayobanga Safari. I'm MP from the DRC. So I would like maybe to speak in French so the panelists will more understand. Ok, donc je suis Ayobanga, je suis député au Congo, à RDC. J'ai attendu que vous aurez à faire un assessment d'ici le 27 et qu'il y a peut-être un problème de savoir avec qui traiter le ministre des PTNTIC du numérique. Mais je voulais juste vous dire qu'il y a aussi une agence du développement du numérique avec laquelle il serait mieux de traiter parce que d'abord, la personne qui les chapeaute, c'est aussi un technicien qui a un background et il est aussi appelé à rester, tandis que les ministres souvent changent. Et donc, on aura peut-être à échanger avec vous les contacts. Mais la bonne chose, vous avez à répondre d'abord à mes questions que je voulais leur poser, c'était savoir quelle est la suite de tous ces assessments, comme il y a ce genre de projets qui viendront. C'est en fait une bonne chose. Et ça donne déjà un courage et ça pousse les acteurs à entrer dans les processus, vu qu'il y aura des projets, il y aura plus de facilité à trouver ces projets. Mais l'autre approche que je voudrais vous demander, c'est de voir comment, à votre niveau, à travers ces rapports, à travers ces assessments, faire entrer plusieurs parties dans les processus. Que ça ne reste pas quelque chose qui est géré au niveau du ministère dans ce sort des bureaucraties. Personnellement, je ne serai pas là le 27 au Congo, mais je voulais savoir, est-ce que lors de vos assessments, est-ce que c'est ouvert aux parties intéressantes qui voudraient venir et suivre? Je voudrais alors savoir quel est le degré d'ouverture du processus pour que les personnes qui voudraient être intéressées puissent alors y entrer. Merci.
Thank you, the moderator and the panelists. My name is Honorable Mefeto Reatile, Member of Parliament from Botswana. I'm here representing APNIC. The issue we are following when the panelists submitted here, but on the issue of the assessment, I think the best way out is to make sure that the involvement of the parliamentarian in the respective country, because they're the one who are playing oversight role over the executive. You cannot go and try to talk to the ministers. The ministers are the one who is always giving a fake report to the UNESCO to say, no, we have so many cables, we have given all the children in the school the gadget. Indeed, the gadget will be with the children, but there's no internet. The cable is there, but there's no accessibility. So the only people whom, if you want to check, to cross-check, it will be the oversight institution, being parliament, because they're the one who are allocating the budget. And then they are the one who are always the teachers complaining to them, no, the gadgets are there, there's no internet. In Africa, it's a out of the day, the internet is down, the internet for the whole week. So where the children are going to have an access to education? So I should think it's very, very paramount to make sure that we engage the institution like Parliament. I thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Sati Satmer Dapel. First of all, I want to thank the panelists for their contributions immensely. The question that was asked earlier, how UNESCO can come in and what role they can play. Africa seems to have some sort of a similar problem. I mean, a pattern of problems. Yesterday, in the other sessions that I was participating, we talked about Internet of Things in Africa, and we talked about emerging technologies in Africa. And we could see that there's a lot of background or fundamental infrastructural deficit that we have. We have problems of light, problem of internet, and so on and so forth. When it comes to the issue of IOI report, I think like the Honorable rightly said, there are certain things that we need to set on ground first. We need to set the framework, the foundations first before implementations. And these foundations are rooted in policies. They are rooted in the government agreeing to these reports, agreeing to this framework, agreeing to the fact that we need this infrastructure. If the government, in the parliament, and even in the executive do not buy this idea, we would just be beating a dead horse. I'm very happy with what is happening in Kenya, basically because the president has keyed into this system. So I think what UNESCO can do in order to help is to create more engagement with the heads of states. Create, I don't want to call it an awareness, because if we say, well, let's say yes, an awareness, create a fora that the heads of states will key into it, buy into it, then it can work with the parliament to ensure that this framework are put into policy. Thank you very much.
I think we have a lot of suggestions. 1, 2 panelists to react to all these. Is there, Professor, oui? Any reaction?
Je peux répondre ou pas? Oui. Juste par rapport à la RDC Saourel, on a travaillé avec justement le ministre Eberand, le ministre en charge du numérique, et nous avons également, dans le cadre des échanges, que ce soit à l'UNESCO ici à Paris, rencontré M. Dominique Migisha, qui s'occupe donc de l'agence du numérique. Donc, le travail qu'on fait, c'est un travail ouvert. La cérémonie, on a lancé des invitations à toutes les administrations pour que les administratifs puissent participer, mais il y a aussi dans le conseil consultatif, hein, je pense que ça a été évoqué ici, une grande ouverture qui permet à la société civile de participer, de s'impliquer dans ce processus. Voilà en gros la réponse que je peux apporter à la question.
Is he hearing us? Fabio, do you have your last word for as we are wrapping up the session? And after that, I will give the floor to colleague
Yes, no, just to thank you all. It was very insightful discussion. I think two of the main issues are how to enhance data availability. So we will consider this in revising the list and see the experience of countries of implementation. And also these ideas for the follow-up, I think it's critical, how to ensure that really we can be more flexible in following up what happened after the implementation of the framework. I think to me is the two key points of the discussion that I take from you, and thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michel. Thank you, Fabio, who woke up at 5 a.m. in Brazil to join us. And thank you to all the panelists for these really important contributions, which gives us a better idea of the concrete achievements and also in your respective countries, and also the suggestions for the future and for the follow-up, which is really crucial for us as we are aiming, as we've talked about the revision, to update to this framework to keep the core, but to ensure more efficiency and to make sure that it keeps up to date, considering the fast evolving technologies. And your contributions are really important, and I thank you to the audience as well. I'm sorry we didn't have a lot of time for questions, but we're happy to discuss after the session. We're available and we'll be happy to carry on your feedback. And thank you so much, Michelle, for excellent moderation.
Thank you very much. A round of applause to all of us for our participation. I think this was a very great panel. I'm going to invite us for a family photo. So I think this is, so can we have a picture with those who are online? Can we invite, no, I think the panelists can sit down. Those all our online participants, can we switch on your camera? Please, online participant, can you switch on your camera, please? Are they hearing?
Camila.
Please
you.
switch on your camera. I can see Camila. I can see the others. Their camera is not on. Okay, let's try to have a picture of this. Can we please? Thank you. Now with all the on-site participants, so we are going to move forward the chair, and then please, on-site participant, can you come forward so we can have a picture. Thank you.